This is Donald Trump if he were to play chess, otherwise known as the Mexico defense. The objective of this opening is to build a wall of pawns to keep your opponent's pieces out. And of course, you'll be playing as white.
It's not racist at all, no.
Starts off pretty normal with e4, e5. Now we want to set the foundation for our wall with pawn to f3. After knight to f6, simply pawn to d3. Now if you look, we are creating the greatest wall that the world has ever seen, even rivaling the Great Wall of China. After knight to f6, now just simply pawn to c4, bishop c5, attacking our g1 horse. We ignore it and play pawn to d3 because the wall is paramount. We must create it at all costs. Regardless of what happens to our own pieces after bishop takes g1, simply rook takes back on g1. Now if you look, just pawn to b6, preparing to put the bishop on b7 and pawn to a4, occupying the center and creating a wall on the left. After castles, we can finish our wall on the right side of the board. After bishop to b7, simply pawn to h3, completing our full wall. Now if you look at this wall, it is the greatest wall you've ever seen. The greatest people building our wall. It's a lovely, lovely wall. Now, after pawn to d6, we continue on with our attack, bishop to e3. Now, if you look at something very crucial about this position, there is no dark square bishop on the black side that can move between these pawns. And if you look, we only have this advantage now. Black only has a light square bishop that cannot penetrate our wall.
I'm really smart.
Interesting. Pawn to a5, knight a3, preparing to grab black by the puss, queen to e7, bishop to e2, and now knight to b4, attacking this square on c2 and not putting the knight on a really nice spot, which is otherwise known as an outpost. After knight to c2, now attacking the knight, black will ignore this and play knight to d7. Now we take the knight. After pawn takes back, we attack the vulnerable black pawn with our queen on d2.
Get the hell out
After
of
pawn
here!
c5 defending, simply queenside castles. And though this looks a little bit unprincipled, it doesn't exactly matter what we play because the game is rigged. Now after bishop to c6, we play rook to f1, preparing this f4 push to try and expand on the king side. Simply rook to a7, preparing to double up on the queen side. Now after king to b2, simply rook f to a8, doubling up on the queen side, attacking this a4 pawn with 3 pieces and preparing to take on a4 with the bishop, perhaps sacrificing brilliantly. After bishop to d1 now, kind of defending this queen side a little bit more. The bishop is acting a little bit like a pawn, but no matter. Rook to a5 now, stopping this pawn from being pushed forward and perhaps preparing to put the knight on f8 to triple up on the queen side. Now bishop to c2, knight f8, just pawn to f4, busting open the king's position. After the pawn takes back on f4, bishop takes f4. Now knight to g6, attacking the bishop, preparing to put the knight on e5. Now because this is a fight for the center, black is going to try and jump into the position with e5. After bishop back to g3, defending the bishop, now pawn to b5, trying to bust open this queen side a little bit. After c takes b5, bishop takes b5, and now this bishop is acting as bait. You don't want to take it because if you do, then the rook will come in and potentially even checkmate you. So you don't want to do that. Simply rook to f5 here, preparing to push one of these pawns forward and also keeping this pawn at bay. So you can't push it forward because then the bishop would be hanging. So the knight can come to e5 now, as I said, occupying the center, the crucial point of this entire game. Bishop takes e5. After pawn takes e5, now we play rook to f1, attacking this f7 square, and now the bishop drops back to defend it. It is the best way of continuing. But now we play pawn to g5, trying to attack the king side with all of our minor pieces. Queen to d7 now, attacking this a4 square, perhaps even preparing to sacrifice the rook. After queen to f2, tripling up on the f-file, simply queen to d4 check, offering a trade of queens, but the king can just simply drop back. After queen takes f2, rook takes f2, now you're still attacking this f7 square. However, there are many ways of defending this. After g6, attacking the rook, it is best.
Thank you very much.
And there's no real way of defending it anyway, so now after bishop to d7, preparing to put the bishop on e6 and defend this f7 square, whilst also attacking this b3 square, simply pawn to h4, expanding on the king side a little bit further. After bishop to e6, as I mentioned, simply rook to d2, preparing to push this d pawn. After rook to d8, attempting to defend it, simply pushing the d pawn anyways. After bishop to h3, because the engine said so, I don't exactly know what this move does. Now pawn to d5, pawn to c4, b takes c4, rook to c8, attacking attacking the pawn, simply rook to e7, ignoring the pawn because we do not care about these minor pieces. We want to execute an attack. So king to f8 now, attacking the rook, simply rook to b7 because that was a pure stunt. We do care about the pawns. Now king to e8, simply bishop to b3, blocking in the pieces, and this piece is once again acting as a pawn because this middle class piece is once again being converted to a lower class pawn after rook to d8, now trying to defend this pawn from coming forward. Simply rook takes b4, as I said, after rook to a7, preparing maybe to double up this way and put some more defenders against the d and c file. They are going to be difficult to defend later on. After rook to f2, simply bishop to c8, dropping the bishop back because h3 was weird. King to b2, rook to c7 now, defending this square so the pawn can't come forward. However, this one can. Simply king to c3, bringing the king closer into the position because, quite frankly, it doesn't matter where it is as long as it's attacking the black pieces. After bishop to d7, simply king to d4, rook to a8, now attacking this a4 pawn and preparing to put the rook on a7 to try and maybe triple up an attack on it. Just pawn to d6 now, attacking the rook, forcing it to a7. However, this does not matter to white because we continue with c5. After bishop takes a4, simply bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes with check. And now it looks pretty scary. You're in check. You got two backwards pawns, but it doesn't matter because we simply play king to d5. And now rook to a1 now, preparing to put the rook on d1 or c1 to try and give the king a few checks. Pawn to e5. And now these pawns are pretty much unstoppable. However, the f7 pawn is defending e6 from this pawn from coming forward, so your sole focus should be trying to stop the c pawn. So which is exactly what black does. Rook to c1 now, and now the e6 square is defended by the pawn. After king to c6 now, preparing to push d7 and try and put the king in check and promote to a queen or another piece, perhaps. Just f6. And at this point, black may as well resign, but after pawn to d7, there's no real way of you stopping all of these pawns, so it's better to run with the king. Here you have a couple of options. You can of course promote to a queen.
Don't be rude.
Who's going to do that when instead you can promote to a knight?
Thank you very much. That's really nice.
Of course,
Thank
this
you.
is what everybody would do. After the king drops back to f8, simply taking the pawn on f6 now. After rook to d1, trying to attack this knight, the game is practically over with knight to e6 check. King comes to e8, pawn to f7, king e7, f8 queen, king takes knight, and now queen to f6 is checkmate. Of course, I find it fitting to do a video like this, given that the 2024 presidential election in the United States is happening this year. Of course, we would like to assess the strategic capabilities of the various candidates, starting with Donald Trump and seeing how he would fare in a game of chess. And I believe that this is exactly how a game of chess by Donald Trump would go, trying to craft a wall, ignoring the current problems in order to create a better future. I myself am not from the United States, so I wouldn't know very much about it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and have a great day.